I tried to move on. God, I really did. I told myself time would do what everyone promises it does. I thought enough distance, enough work, enough sleepless nights in different cities would eventually silence whatever part of me still reached for you in quiet moments. But it never happened. I'm older now. Older in the way heartbreak reshapes a man slowly from the inside. The kind that leaves exhaustion behind your eyes, no amount of sleep fixes. I built a life that looked complete from far away, but loneliness has a way of surviving even inside success. I almost turned this recording off because speaking honestly about love after it ruins you feels humiliating somehow, especially for someone like me, someone who spent years pretending emotional control meant strength. Something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. Maybe that's because these words were always supposed to find you. Not everyone, just you. The woman whose absence somehow kept echoing through my life long after I pretended I was fine.
There's a memory I can't escape lately.
A kitchen.
Strange, isn't it?
How ordinary places become sacred after someone leaves them behind. It was winter, around 2:40 in the morning. I remember walking barefoot across cold tile because sleep had abandoned me again. The house was completely silent, except for the refrigerator humming softly near the counter. I opened the cabinet, automatically reaching for 2 mugs before realizing there was nobody else there anymore, and that realization hit me so suddenly I had to grip the edge of the sink. 1 mug stayed in my hand. The other remained untouched inside the cabinet. I didn't say this to anyone then, but I'll tell you now. That was the moment I realized moving on and letting go are not the same thing. Because physically, yes, life continues. You work. You smile when expected. You answer calls. You survive. But emotionally, some people remain inside you, like a song playing faintly in another room. I remember standing there in that kitchen, staring at steam rising from coffee I barely tasted, wondering how someone could still feel emotionally present in your life after so much silence. Maybe you know that feeling too. Maybe you've ever laid awake at 3 a.m. trying to convince yourself you no longer miss someone, while your chest quietly betrays you. That kind of ache changes people. Not loudly, quietly. You stop trusting peace because loss taught you beautiful things disappear. Even warm moments begin carrying sadness inside them because part of you is already bracing for goodbye. I lived like that for years after you. There were nights I drove nowhere just to avoid going home to empty rooms. City lights blurred against the windshield while old conversations replayed endlessly in my mind. Things I should have said, things I almost admitted. The truth, I was terrified of how deeply I loved you. Not because love itself frightened me, because losing you did. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought distancing myself emotionally would somehow protect me from heartbreak. I thought becoming harder to reach would make abandonment hurt less if it happened again. But all it did was create inside moments that should have been beautiful. There's another memory I carry like a wound, a chair near the living room window. You used to sit there with one leg folded underneath you while evening light filled the room softly around us. Sometimes music played low in the background while you read quietly beside me. And I remember one night after you were gone, I walked past that chair and physically stopped breathing for a second because it still felt like the room expected you to return. The blanket remained draped over the side exactly how you left it. God, I sat there afterward, staring at nothing while darkness slowly covered the windows outside. And for the first time in years, I admitted something I had spent my whole life hiding. I was not afraid of love. I was afraid nobody would stay once they saw how damaged I really was. That confession still hurts, especially now, especially speaking to you. Because maybe you loved someone who kept pulling away every time things became emotionally real. Maybe you blamed yourself for their distance when the truth was they were fighting ghosts you couldn't see. I know that man too well. I was him. There were unfinished messages I never sent you. Entire paragraphs written around midnight and deleted before morning. I miss you. I still think about you. I didn't know how to receive love without fearing its ending. Delete. 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 Funny how silence can destroy things just as deeply as cruelty, maybe deeper. Because silence leaves people alone with uncertainty, alone with questions, alone wondering if they imagined the connection at all. You didn't imagine it. I need you to know that. You were real to me in ways I didn't know how to survive back then. There was a hospital waiting room once, years later, where I watched an older man asleep beside his wife holding her hand like losing contact with her even briefly frightened him. And something inside me cracked watching them. Not envy, recognition. Like some quiet voice inside me whispered, that's what you were searching for the whole time. Not intensity, not chaos, safety. A love gentle enough to rest inside. Maybe God had been trying to teach me that through every heartbreak I refused to understand. Maybe love was never supposed to feel like emotional warfare. Maybe it was supposed to feel like coming home exhausted and finally setting your burdens down beside someone who doesn't run from your scars. Lately, I keep imagining that kind of peace again. That scares me, because hope becomes dangerous after disappointment. Still, there are moments now where I picture a quieter future that somehow doesn't feel empty anymore. Warm light through curtains, late conversations in tired voices, someone beside me who understands silence without fearing it. And every time I imagine that life, somehow my heart still reaches toward you. Maybe that's what I've been trying to deny all these years. Not that I loved you, that some part of me never stopped. I didn't know then that a person could leave your life physically while remaining the emotional home your heart keeps searching for afterward. I got very good at disappearing emotionally. That's the truth, not physically. Still ants showed up. Still ants people still laughed at dinners and sat through meetings and carried conversations like a man who had everything under control. But inside, I was somewhere far away, and the frightening part is how long a person can live like that before realizing they've become emotionally unreachable, even to themselves. I'm older now. Old enough to know that loneliness doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like routine. Quiet apartments, unanswered feelings, nights that blur together until even your memories start feeling emotionally numb. I almost turned this recording off tonight because there are parts of this story that still make shame rise into my chest when I think about them too long. But something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And maybe that's because some part of me still believes you were the one person who saw through the version of me everyone else accepted. The guarded version today. the emotionally careful version. The man pretending distance was strength. There was a night after you left that still lives inside me like unfinished music. It was raining hard outside. The kind of rain that makes streetlights look blurred and lonely through the windows. I remember sitting alone in the living room around 3 in the morning with the television on mute because silence had started feeling too heavy by itself. Your sweater was still hanging over the chair near the hallway. I should moved it, but I couldn't. I remember staring at it while cold coffee sat untouched beside me, and suddenly this unbearable ache came over me because the house still smelled faintly like you, shampoo, perfume, warmth. Funny how scent survives longer than people do sometimes. I didn't say this to anyone then, but I'll tell you now. That night was the first time I realized grief is not always loud. Sometimes it's just a man sitting in dim light, unable to throw away a sweater because losing the scent attached to it feels too final. I think heartbreak humiliates people quietly, especially men. We're taught to survive pain privately, to carry abandonment without speaking about it too much. So instead of grieving honestly, we distract ourselves, work harder, stay busier, pretend numbness means healing. I did that for years. And maybe you know what it feels like loving someone who slowly disappears into emotional silence instead of admitting they're hurting. Maybe you sat beside someone who looked calm while internally collapsing. I know that kind of loneliness now. Not just yours. Mine too. There were nights I drove for hours after midnight because going home felt unbearable. Empty roads, red lights blinking against wet pavement, songs playing softly while memories returned one by one like ghosts refusing to leave. I kept replaying moments I misunderstood while they were happening. The way your voice softened when you were disappointed, but trying not to fight. The way you paused before saying certain things. The way your eyes searched my face, sometimes like you were asking, "Are you ever going to fully let me in?" God. I wish I knew then what I know now. I thought emotional control protected love, but love dies slowly in places where honesty never feels safe enough to breathe. That realization nearly destroyed me when it finally arrived. There's one memory I still carry with unbearable clarity. You were asleep on the couch one evening while rain tapped softly against the windows. A lamp near the bookshelf cast warm light across the room, and your hand rested near mine without touching it completely. I remember wanting so badly to reach for you, and I didn't. Even now, I hate admitting that. Because the truth is, tenderness terrified me more than loneliness did. Loneliness felt familiar. Love felt risky. I learned early in life that people leave eventually, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally. And once that belief settles deep enough inside a person, they begin preparing for abandonment before happiness even has time to arrive fully. That was me. Always bracing, always waiting for the shift. Even during beautiful moments, especially during beautiful moments, because somewhere deep inside, I had already convinced myself I was too damaged for someone to love gently forever. I never said that aloud, not to anyone, but it shaped everything. The way I withdrew after closeness, the way I struggled to accept affection without suspicion, the way I kept one foot emotionally outside the relationship, even while loving you deeply. Fear does strange things to people. It turns warmth into danger. It teaches wounded hearts to mistake distance for safety. And eventually, the person beside you grows tired of trying to reach someone who keeps disappearing internally. I understand that now. Too late for us, maybe, but not too late for honesty. There was a hospital waiting room years ago I still think about. Sometimes cold fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. The smell of old coffee and disinfectant hanging in the air. Everyone sitting quietly beside people they were terrified to lose. Yeah. And I remember watching him hand hold his wife's hand while she slept against his shoulder. Such a small thing. But something inside me broke watching them because I realized I had spent most of my life starving for exactly that kind of closeness while pretending I didn't need anyone. I think God whispers through ordinary moments sometimes. Not loudly, just enough to make your heart stop pretending. Maybe that waiting room was one of those moments for me. Maybe love had been trying to find me long before I learned how to stop running from it. And maybe that's why every road inside me still somehow leads back to you. Not because I'm trapped in the past, because my soul recognized something real and spent years trying unsuccessfully to replace it afterward. I tried. God, I tried. Different cities, different conversations, different people whose kindness I couldn't fully receive because some abandoned part of me still measured warmth against the memory of yours. That sounds unfair. Maybe it is. But heartbreak isn't always logical. Some connections change the emotional architecture of your life permanently. You become aware afterward of how empty certain rooms inside you really are. Lately, I've started imagining things I stopped allowing myself to hope for years ago. Peaceful, full mornings. Shared silence that doesn't feel lonely. A life where love no longer feels temporary from the beginning. And strangely, every time those images appear, I feel your presence somewhere inside them. That frightens me because hope asks wounded people to risk disappointment again. Still, there are moments now where I think maybe healing begins the instant we stop, pretending we never needed love in the first place. Maybe human beings were never designed to survive emotional isolation for this long. Maybe our souls dry out without tenderness. And maybe mine stayed attached to you because some part of me understood before I did. You felt like home during a lifetime where I never fully felt safe anywhere. I didn't know then that the loneliness I called freedom was actually my heart mourning the one place it ever truly wanted to stay. I think losing someone changes your relationship with silence forever. Before heartbreak, silence can feel peaceful, restful even. Afterward, it becomes haunted. Every quiet room starts carrying echoes. Every ordinary object begins holding emotional weight it never had before. A coffee cup, a jacket near the door, a side of the bed that stays cold too long. I know that now, more deeply than I ever wanted to. I'm older these days, and grief sits differently inside an older man. It stops arriving like storms and starts arriving like weather. Constant, subtle, lingering in the background of otherwise normal afternoons. I almost turned this recording off tonight because part of me still feels ashamed admitting how much losing you affected me. But something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And maybe that's because somewhere out there is one woman who also knows what it feels like carrying emotional abandonment quietly through everyday life. Maybe you've survived that kind of ache too. Maybe that's why these words keep reaching toward you. There's a memory that returns to me constantly lately. A voicemail. Your voicemail. I found it accidentally one night while searching through old recordings on my phone. I almost deleted it without listening. But I pressed play, and suddenly there you were again. Your voice. Soft. Tired. Warm in that gentle way I never appreciated enough while I still had you beside me. I remember sitting completely still while the message played. The room around me disappeared for a second. All I could hear was the sound of your breathing between sentences. And when it ended, silence hit harder than before. I didn't say this to anyone then, but I'll tell you now. That voicemail broke something open inside me I had spent years trying to numb. Because for the first time, I heard clearly how much love had existed between us underneath all the fear and emotional distance I kept hiding behind. And God, I wasn't prepared for that realization. I think one of the cruelest things about heartbreak is that understanding usually arrives after the damage is already done. You finally become emotionally honest when there's nobody left in the room to hear it. That truth still hurts me. There were nights afterward where I couldn't sleep at all. I'd walk through the house around 3 a.m. touching things absent-mindedly like a ghost haunting his own life. The kitchen counter where we leaned talking quietly after midnight. The hallway where arguments turned into silence instead of honesty. The chair by the window where you used to sit with your legs tucked underneath you while rain tapped softly outside. Some memories don't fade. They settle into the walls. And maybe you know what that feels like too. Maybe there's a place you avoid because your heart still remembers who used to stand there beside you. That kind of grief changes people quietly. You stop rushing emotionally. Stop trusting temporary things so easily. Even happiness begins carrying caution inside it. I became like that after you. Careful, careful, too careful. There were women afterward who tried to love me kindly. Good women, patient women. But I could never fully arrive emotionally because part of was still standing in the ruins of what I lost with you. That sounds terrible, admitting out loud, but it's true. I tried to move forward while secretly dragging the past behind me everywhere. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought heartbreak meant missing a person. Now, I think real heartbreak is realizing someone changed the emotional shape of your soul permanently. After certain people, nothing feels exactly the same again. There's something I need to confess that still embarrasses me. For years, I blamed timing, circumstances, stress, life. But deep down, I knew fear played the biggest role. Fear of abandonment, fear of needing someone too much, fear that if I fully opened my heart and you still left someday, I wouldn't survive it emotionally. So instead, I loved cautiously, half open. And cautious love slowly starves relationships without the other person realizing it immediately. That realization nearly destroyed me once it became impossible to deny. There was a rainy evening not long ago where I sat alone in my car outside a grocery store parking lot long after the rain had stopped. People moved past my windows carrying flowers, groceries, children, or ordinary pieces of life. And suddenly, this overwhelming loneliness hit me. Not because I was alone, because I finally understood how deeply I wanted to stop being emotionally unreachable. I think that was the moment healing truly began. Not dramatic healing, just honesty. The quiet kind, the kind where a man finally admits, I was loved more gently than I knew how to receive. God, that realization humbles you. especially when you've spent years pretending independence meant you needed nothing from anyone. The truth is, I needed warmth desperately. I needed reassurance, presence, softness. I needed someone willing to sit beside the damaged parts of me without turning away. And you tried. You really tried. Maybe that's why your memory still follows me the way it does. Not as punishment, as unfinished gratitude. I never properly thanked you for loving me during seasons when I barely knew how to love myself. Maybe someone has been trying to teach me through all this pain. Maybe God whispers through heartbreak the same way he whispers through loneliness. Quietly, patiently, waiting for us to stop running long enough to hear what matters. Lately, I think I'm finally listening. Not perfectly, but honestly, there are moments now where I picture a future that feels softer than the life I've lived so far.
Slower morning, besides someone who understands silence without fearing it.
Hands reaching naturally across a table. Conversations where neither person hides their scars anymore. My heart still somehow speaks your name first. Not because I'm trapped in the past, because loving you changed my understanding of what home was supposed to feel like. That realization still scares me. Hope always does after enough disappointment. But maybe healing isn't forgetting someone. Maybe it's allowing their love to soften the parts of you that pain tried to harden permanently. I think that's what's happening to me now, slowly. Like winter ending one quiet morning before you fully notice the temperature changed. And maybe wherever you are, some part of you still feels this too. Maybe hearts remember each other longer than pride allows us to admit. I didn't know then that losing you would eventually teach me the difference between surviving love and finally being willing to surrender to it honestly. I don't fight the feeling anymore. For a long time, I did. I tried burying it under work, distance, new routines, new cities. I convinced myself enough years passing would eventually quiet whatever part of me still turned toward you during lonely moments. But some truths don't disappear just because we avoid them. They wait quietly, patiently, until we become tired enough to stop running. I'm older now, older in the way emotional pain reshapes a man from the inside out. I've learned how to survive empty rooms, learned how to carry heartbreak privately while still functioning in the world. But survival and living are not the same thing. I almost turned this recording off tonight. And finally, admitting someone mattered to you and what time never erased, especially when you spent years pretending you had already healed. But something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And maybe that's because somewhere out there is one woman whose heart still acts quietly too. One woman who also knows what it feels like to carry unfinished love through ordinary days. Maybe that woman is you. There was a moment recently that stayed with me. I was sitting alone near the window during a thunderstorm just before dawn. The room was dim except for streetlight leaking softly through the curtains. Rain struck the glass. Rain struck the glass steadily while the whole city seemed asleep. And suddenly I remembered the sound of your laugh. Not the loud version, the smaller one. The tired laugh you made late at night when your guard was finally down. God, it hit me so hard I had to close my eyes. Because for one brief second, it felt like you were still there beside me. Like time folded inward and returned something I thought life had already taken permanently. I didn't say this to anyone then, but I'll tell you now. That moment made me realize grief is sometimes just love with nowhere left to go. And I think I carried that love silently for years because I never fully understood what it was asking from me.
Not possession, not obsession, honesty.
That's the word I kept avoiding. I loved you honestly in my heart long before I learned how to express it honestly with my life. And maybe that's the tragedy of emotionally wounded people. We feel deeply, but speak too late. There were nights after you left where I sat in complete darkness because turning lights on somehow made the emptiness harder to ignore. I'd hear the refrigerator humming faintly from the kitchen, while old memories replayed themselves against the silence. Your footsteps down the hallway, the way you tucked your hair behind your ear while listening. The softness in your voice when you asked if I was okay, even when you were the one hurting. I should answered you better back then. The truth is, I wasn't okay. I was emotionally drowning while pretending I could still breathe normally. And maybe you know what it feels like, loving someone who keeps insisting they're fine while slowly disappearing internally. That kind of pain leaves people feeling invisible. I understand that now, more than I wish I did. There's something I need to confess before this ends. Part of me always believed love was temporary, not because I wanted it to be. Because abandonment taught me to expect endings even during beautiful beginnings. So every time happiness arrived, I braced myself. Every time closeness deepened, fear deepened with it. I kept waiting for loss to appear. And eventually, my fear created distance where intimacy should have lived. I regret that more than I know how to explain, especially now. Especially speaking to you like this, because somewhere along the way I realized you weren't asking me for perfection. You were asking me to stay emotionally present. And I didn't know how. I think about God differently these days. Not in loud ways. More like whispers arriving through exhaustion. A sunrise after a sleepless night. A stranger smiling when your spirit feels heavy. A sudden feeling that maybe your heart isn't ruined, only tired. Lately, I've started believing maybe love works like that too. Quiet, patient, returning softly after years of silence, asking, "Are you ready now?" I don't know if I'm fully ready, but I know this. I no longer want to spend my life hiding from tenderness because I'm afraid of losing it. That kind of living almost turned my soul to stone. And maybe your heart has grown tired too. Tired of pretending abandonment didn't wound you. Tired of carrying strength constantly. Tired of acting like longing for warmth makes you weak. It doesn't. Human beings were never meant to survive entirely alone emotionally. We need safe love, cinematic love, just honest love. The kind where silence stops feeling lonely because someone stays. I think that's what my heart recognized in you before my mind ever caught up. Not excitement, peace. The kind of peace exhausted people cry over quietly because they almost forgot it existed. Lately, I imagine smaller things than I used to. Coffee in quiet kitchens, hands touching absent-mindedly while passing each other, falling asleep without emotional distance, sitting between two people like a wall. And strangely, those images no longer frighten me the way they once did. Maybe healing finally entered me the moment I stopped treating love like a threat. Or maybe loving you changed me permanently in ways I'm only beginning to understand now. Either way, I know something today I couldn't admit years ago. My heart never stayed with you because I failed to move on. It stayed because some part of me knew you were the closest thing to emotional home I had ever found. And after enough loneliness, the soul remembers where warmth once lived. I don't know what happens after this. Maybe our lives never cross again outside these words. But if your heart has been carrying exhaustion quietly too, I hope you know this. You are still worthy of gentle love after everything life has done to you. So am I. Maybe that's the lesson all this heartbreak was trying to teach me from the beginning. Not that love destroys us, that avoiding it slowly does. And if something in this story met you where you were hurting, stay close. Subscribe, share, or leave yours. No one heals alone. I didn't know then that the heart can spend years searching the world only to realize it never truly left the place where it once felt understood.